I'm Edmund Edgar. I work on a project called Reality.eth, which is a crowdsourced smart contract Oracle system, and we're building a new system called Backstop Layer 2. But today I'm not going to talk mainly about those. I'm going to be shilling somebody else's dead prediction market project. So I don't know how many of you guys have heard of Augur. Great. Augur was this really early prediction market. I wasn't on the team for Augur. My connection with Augur, so I was running Reality Keys, that was the first smart contract Oracle. And since in 2014, that was the only smart contract Oracle in the world, I got to know anybody who was making a prediction market at that time. So I got to meet the Gnosis guys, and I got to meet the Augur team. And I read the Truth Coin white paper by Paul Storz, which is a very important piece of work that lays the foundation for a lot of stuff we're doing in crypto nowadays. So I looked at the Augur code during the bug bounty. I found a design flaw in it, which I reported and got a bounty. And I bought my wife some lovely goats. And then having done that, I spent a lot of time looking for more flaws in the system, which unfortunately I didn't find, so it was very good. So I ended up just spending a huge amount of my time reading their code and looking for bugs in it, which weren't there. So the fundamental problem that Augur had to solve was kind of what we call the Oracle problem. Nowadays people talk about oracles, sometimes meaning just sort of data feeds and things. But back then when we talked about the Oracle problem, we meant how do you get information from the outside world to the blockchain, right? So in their case, it's just about prediction markets. You can very easily write smart contracts that will allow you to trade backwards and forwards and trade your bets. But the problem is, how do you actually get the answer to the blockchain? So if you've got a market on who's going to win the presidential election in 2020, at the end of it, you've then got to answer the question, who actually won the presidential election? And you've got to do this in an environment where all of the people who have made the losing bet want to make the system lie, right? Everybody wants to make the system missettle. And this was important for prediction markets, but the applications of this are way, way wider. So any Oracle system, we've got this, but also any other time you need like truth and justice on the blockchain, right? So in particular, right now, we've got loads and loads of DAOs, we've got loads of contracts that have governance because they can be upgraded. And if we can't do that governance securely, then it doesn't matter how good all the rest of the projects are, they're all going to get broken. So this problem of like truth and justice, how do we get information about the world, or information that everybody knows, how do we get that to the blockchain? The Augur layer kids now are calling this intersubjective work. They made like when you've got enough TVL, you can make up words. So they call this intersubjective work, but it's just stuff that everybody knows that we've got to get to the blockchain. So let's go through some things that you might think of doing and why they don't work and what we have to do to first get to the Augur solution. So a lot of people do token voting, and token voting is really powering loads and loads of systems right now, and it's horrible. First of all, the very obvious hole in a token voting scheme is if someone buys 51% of the tokens, then they can make your token voting scheme do whatever they want. Right? So if it was a prediction market, you could make a bunch of bets on the losing horse, and then when it comes to report, you have 51% of the tokens, and you make the system live. So that's no good. You can also do bribery, and bribery can be much, much cheaper than 51% of the tokens. Because when you're doing voting, you don't really have any skin in the game, right? Even if you're a token holder, your vote is probably not going to be the one that makes the difference in whether the system works correctly or not, right? So if I've just got one small part of the token, of the total tokens, it's in my interest to take even a very small bribe, and if everybody does that, then the system will break. And you know, people will then often say, okay, well, we'll decentralize this system, we'll get a wider token ownership. But that actually makes the bribery vectors worse, right? So token voting is really terrible. So you might think, okay, let's add some incentives to the token voting scheme. Let's add like slashing to the token voting scheme, or like rewards for answering correctly. But then that gets you back to the problem we're trying to solve, which is how do you know who to slash, right? How do you know who to reward? If you slash the minority, then you make it safer in some ways, but you also make it worse in other ways. Because if you're slashing the minority, then an attacker can flip those incentives around, right? If the attacker can persuade people that they are going to successfully attack the system and make it settle wrongly, then they can make it in the interests of they can punish the honest users and reward the dishonest users. So, for example, if you can make a contract which makes a commitment that says, I am able to pay this bribe, you may be able to actually do a bribery attack for no money, right? You have to prove that you can do the bribery attack, but if everybody believes you can do the bribery attack, then their system will do the bribing for you. So token voting with slashing on its own is not enough. We need to add something. So here's the solution that Paul Stortz originally came up with in Truthcoin, and then the Augur guys used. We're going to back the slashing with a fork. So let's imagine that there's some contentious decision where somebody is trying to make the issue lie. Let's say with the 2020 election, some people are trying to say that, to make the system think that Trump won the election, even though Biden won the election. What we're going to do is we start with one prediction market. We're going to clone the entire thing into two, right? So we're going to have Augur 1 and Augur 2. In Augur 1, so all of the tokens are then going to be split. So everything that was in the original Augur is now in Augur 1 and Augur 2, except that Augur 1 thinks that Trump won the election, and Augur 2 thinks that Biden won the election. So anybody who has put tokens in this thing to settle, anybody who has made a claim that Trump won the election is going to have their tokens moved into the version that says Trump won the election. And anyone who says that Biden won the election is going to have their tokens in the thing that says that Biden won the election. And so the great thing about this is the blockchain kind of doesn't have to know who was right. There's no point in having a prediction market which settles wrongly. So if you've got your tokens sitting in the version that says Trump won the election, then you've got tokens that are worthless. And if you've got tokens in the version that says that Biden won the election, then you've got tokens that are worth, we hope, as much as the original prediction market before it did this fork. Okay? So this is this forking mechanism. It's also implicitly how we back things like Ethereum. Like if somebody tries to censor Ethereum, we'll do what we call social slashing. We'll fork Ethereum and we'll leave them on their shitty version of Ethereum that censors transactions. And the honest people will be on the honest version of Ethereum that actually gets the transactions through. So this is the mechanism that backs all the base layers, right? And here we're going to do it in a DApp on the application. So there's a couple of problems. The first problem is that forking is really socially expensive, right? Everybody all the time has to follow which is the correct fork, and it involves a lot of kind of cognitive load for everybody. And we don't want to have like 10 million versions of Augur where every time we have a market we have a different fork. But we can use this just as a backstop. Before we do the forking, we have what we call an escalation game. So I run Reality.eth, which is also an escalation game. It's not the one that Augur used. But it's basically the same process. So anybody can answer a question. When they answer the question, they put up a bond. So let's say if I might want to trick the system. So I might start by saying Trump won the election, and I put in $10. Then somebody else can come in and put in a different answer. For example, say that Biden won the election, because they think I'm kind of full of shit, and they can put $20. And then we can keep escalating like that until one of us gives up. And once these bonds get high enough, at that point the system is going to fork. But generally they're not going to go that high, because if I know that ultimately the system is going to do this forking, and if I'm on the side that says that Trump won the election, then I'm going to lose my money. There's just no point. So in the vast majority of cases, you don't even have a dispute, right? Somebody just puts in the right answer, and it's not in anybody's interest to challenge it. In some cases, they did have a few kind of dispute rounds, and they did go a certain way, but Augur in practice never actually forked. And I don't think it really convincingly missettled. This really did work in practice. There's another problem here, though, which is that we want to bet in ether and DAI. We don't want to bet in Augur tokens. Augur tokens can be forked by the Augur system, right? Anybody who's got an Augur token, we clone the Augur token, then there's Augur 1 and Augur 2, and that all works fine. But you can't fork ether and DAI if you don't control them. So what the Augur guys did was this. They said they've got their own governance token, the Augur token, which is called rep. If there's a fork, you've got to move your rep into one of these forks or the other fork. And then the blockchain can read objectively which side is the most popular, right? What's the side where people move most of their tokens? And then once that happens, it watches that for a while, sees which one gets the most tokens, and then the ether and DAI get put into the most valuable side. And that's all well and good, but now we have what's called an economic security bound. Because let's imagine that we have $100 million of bets on Biden and Trump, and the Augur tokens are only worth $1 million. It's obviously, again, still in somebody's interest to buy up half the Augur tokens or to do bribes, to the value of half the Augur tokens to make it missettle so that they can win their losing bet and then get all these ether and DAI that ended up going into the wrong fork. So what they do is they try to make sure that never happens. So we're going to make sure that the open interest, that's all the money that you could steal, right? All the money that's been bet. Make sure that the open interest is always less than half of the value of the governance token. Okay. So you're continually measuring that, and then to make sure that invariant isn't broken, what we're going to do is, if the governance token gets too low compared to the open interest, we're going to put up the fees. And if you put up the fees, then one of two things will happen. Either since the Augur tokens get the fees from betting and trading, either the Augur token will become more valuable, or the open interest will decrease, right? So either we'll drive away people who are going to trade, or we'll increase the profit to the Augur token holders, and that will make the token more valuable. So one way or the other, it's supposed to come back into balance, okay? But this also has some problems. So one is that this actually, if it's a long-term market, you actually need quite a lot of fees to pay, to persuade these people not to break the system. So if it's a very short-term market, like if you're doing sports betting, generally sports betting happens mostly during the game. Nearly all the sports betting happens during the game. So sports betting markets settle in a couple of hours typically. But if it's a very long-term market, then you've got this money's got to be locked up for like a year or something. Or if we're trying to do it for DAO governance, for example, using the same mechanism, you might have a treasury that's supposed to disperse money over 5 or 10 years. And you don't want to have to pay people to hold this token, to provide people revenue that makes it worth their while to hold this token. Let's say, if you've got interest rates of 5% or 10% or something, that's going to just drain all your token value. So that's half the problem. The other half of the problem is that you may get what they call parasites, or in the UMA system they call these tax evaders. So somebody can make a system that doesn't actually do the trading on Augur, but when it comes to settle, it's going to read what the Augur contract is doing and steal their information, okay? So if you do that, then you get what they call parasitical open interest. You get a lot of money that can be stolen from this other market by making the Augur system more settled, okay? So let's have a look at some other approaches. I'm going to show my one at the end, but one is we could make the whole of Ethereum forkable, right? So the problem is that the ETH and DAI couldn't fork. If the ETH and DAI could have been forked, then it would all be fine, right? There's nothing that you're counting. There's nothing you're measuring. It's just this purely subjective process, which doesn't have any security bound. So Martin Kopelman from Gnosis a long time ago had this idea he called the ultimate oracle. So that was going to fork Ethereum if we needed to as a backstop. Justin Drake recently or a couple of years ago, had this idea of having a price feed like enshrined in Ethereum consensus, which would also mean that if somebody messed around with that price feed, then we could end up forking Ethereum. Eigenlayer in version 1, I don't know if this is their plan or not. Like, their system doesn't make much sense to me if it wasn't the plan. potentially, if eigenlayer had become too big to fail, we might have had to fork Ethereum to bail them out. And so they got a lot of pushback for doing this, and they ended up doing eigenlayer version 2, which didn't have this issue. Another trick that you can play, which is maybe a bit obscure to get into, is what eigenlayer version 2 does, which is that you don't exactly try to get the right answer, you try to insure people who pay an insurance premium against getting the wrong answer. And if you do it that way, then parasites are just not paying insurance premiums, so the parasites maybe lose out. So this doesn't solve the cost issue, but it solves maybe the parasitism issue. Then just finally to show my thing, what we're trying to do is, since we can't fork Ethereum, let's make a new chain that we can fork over truth and justice, right? Again, this is just a backstop. Like Augur, it may never fork, but the ability to fork secures an escalation game, and the escalation game allows you to answer any question that people know the answer to. So what we're doing is we want maximum interoperability with Ethereum, and to use Ethereum consensus. So what we're doing with this is we're making it a layer 2 of Ethereum. It's all managed by a contract on Ethereum. We encourage people to use native forkable assets. And if you're using an asset that you can fork, then you don't have this security bound, and we can secure basically any amount of money using this forking mechanism. If you want to bridge like Ether and DAI and stuff over from Ethereum, then we still kind of end up with the economic security bound for the bridged assets to work out which of these forks they should follow. Okay, so that's all I've got. I would recommend, so I've put a bunch of links up here. I would really recommend that everyone reads the Augur white paper. It's very old, but it's still very relevant. Even if you're not interested in this particular issue, it is such a good piece of writing. It's like the right way to do white papers. It's very clear, it's not longer than it should be. It very clearly states its assumptions and its limitations. It's a really nice piece of work. There's also the paper by Paul Stortz, who unfortunately he tried to build this thing on Bitcoin, and he's still trying to like upgrade Bitcoin so he can build it 10 years later. But the work that he did is really important, not just for Augur, but for a lot of other crypto stuff. Okay, that's all I got. Any questions?
That's forkable based on the application layer needs. That seems quite a tedious and dangerous solution. Like it comes across to the way that we would open up Ethereum to be forkable for application needs. And yes, you can put some vetting and preventative mechanisms on top of it, but essentially it could lead to a massive forkable event on a regular basis. Is that something that's okay to deal with?
Okay, that's a good question. So, yeah, so the question was, see if I get this right. The question was, isn't it dangerous to have a forkable, so from my proposal at the end, isn't it dangerous to have a forkable chain where maybe it's going to fork a lot? Is that actually going to work, right? Is that fair? Yeah. So one thing about this is, like I said, Augur never actually forked, right? The forking in Augur is a backstop. Crypto economically, it's never rational to hit it, right? You always have to be done, to actually get to a fork, you have to do this escalation game. And to do this escalation game, somebody has to be wrong, right? Somebody has to be putting up money irrationally. And we can also kind of regulate how often it happens by setting the level of bonds that you have to put up before you fork. So we're thinking probably it's going to be in the range of kind of 3 to 5%. So we don't expect to have a huge number of forks. At the same time, if you're using the chain with the assumption that it's going to fork, it's not too bad. It's generally fine. What's really bad is if you end up with 50-50 forks, right? If they come in like this one is obviously correct and this one is obviously wrong, then that's actually quite easy to handle. It means that each user, in our case, has to like add a new chain up, add a new thing to their MetaMask for a new chain. But other than that, it doesn't really affect you very much. And it doesn't affect application developers at all. Right? This is the great thing about it, is that you can take any existing application that's already on layer 1 or some other layer 2 that needs governance or that needs oracles or that needs any real-world information and redeploy that unchanged. Because the world around you is going to fork, but it's just like the world under your feet. Right? As far as the application is concerned, you know, they don't know that there's a like bizarro twin that they have, right? They don't need to worry about that. The user has to decide which fork they're going to choose, so there is a little bit of cognitive load to that. So if we have to do it every day, it probably wouldn't work. But I don't think we'll have to do it every day. And like I say, this is already how we govern Ethereum, right? This is how we govern layer 1 chains. You know, if the core developers try to push something through and do something that the community doesn't want, then we may end up with an economic fork. We had one already with Ether and ETC, and it was okay. I mean, you know, it does cause some disruption, but it's not too bad. And if you're expecting it to happen, then it will cause even less disruption.
Thank you, Edgar, for the talk. Next up, we'll have Jaya from them talking about community approach to privacy. Is that correct? I have your slides here.